Welcome to Coffee with Samso. Today we're at Blacksmith here in Bulford Street. I've got Ian Mclelland is the CEO of Proactive. Used to be Proactive Investors, now we're called Proactive, all the way from Canada. So Ian, maybe you can start with just an intro about yourself and we'll go from there.
Sure. Thanks for having me on the show, by the way.
Oh, fantastic.
Good location as well, like this.
Yeah, it's
nice
good.
And casual, yeah. It's always good to visit Perth as well. Love this city. Proactive is 12 years old now. So, give you the short version of it because it's got a long storied history to it, but it started in roughly 2005. It started as a financial blog. Was designed to be more of a place for me to dump my own ideas around investments I had at the time. Blog got a lot more traffic than I expected, so it was kind of a bit of a eureka moment on, is there something more you could do with this blog? And that's what Proactive became, was 2 years of research after that moment on how do you build a product that would work for retail investors all over the world. Institutions as well, but retail was definitely the initial place we started from. And how do you produce a lot of content? How do you keep it consistent and build a brand and a kind of portfolio that would get decent distribution and syndication? That's really what we started from. Fast forward for 12 years, we've more or less done that. We have offices now in 6 cities. We're sitting at around 80 staff globally. We work with around 1,000 companies globally, all sectors, all markets. And it's been a fun ride.
It's interesting you mentioned that it started as a blog. Samso started as a blog.
Yes,
and
you could be us in 10 years.
Yeah. So it's interesting how these things work, because you start, well, my experience that you start getting people making comments about how they like it and they thought it was simple, because I think a lot of companies forget that you have a very complicated business, but if you don't translate that simply outside, you can lose your audience.
Absolutely. I think if you look at the entire kind of loosely investor relations, public relations, media services like us, all of us are really doing the same thing, which is trying to help the company translate its story into a way that it will resonate with investors. And there's lots of different ways you can slice that. And I think if you look at most companies who are publicly listed anywhere in the world, it's a multi-pronged approach. You got to use different products. We have different types of distribution, different types of writing style. Some write short, some write long. Some go very detailed, some don't. But you need a range of those products to help, because different investors have a different level of understanding of companies as well. And some investors are, they're going to go on the Saturday tip sheet kind of people that will look at a tip and they'll buy it just on that, right? And there's other people who are going to spend months doing very detailed analysis and are almost like mini portfolio managers who are really going to go into it. So you got to have that range I think you have to have that range of content out there in the market, so to speak, to address those different types of investors. And no one company can provide all that. It's always going to require multiple services, which is why I think a product like yours works very well and has a specific type of audience, and a product like ours also works very well. And it's not unusual for us to be working with the same company, and they'll get different things out of the two products, even though technically we're both doing the same thing, which is trying to address the investor community.
Yeah, I think that's it's the beauty. I mean, one of the things I would like to get, since you guys have been around 12 years, soon to be taken over by Samso. What's your view? How has things changed? Look, today we know how things are. We got the Twitters and everything else, and everyone reacts that way. But what was it like then and now? What's the journey change?
Yeah, I think when I started, I was lucky in a lot of ways that when I started rolling into this business, I came in, really when we started getting going, we were talking right before the crash, 2007, 2008. So when that happened, a lot of the large companies in the media space were crushed, absolutely crushed by that. And then in addition to that, you had just the print industry has been on decline for a long time. So there was that change between the old model, I would say, up to probably 2008, really, but it was slowly dying. Was the old model used to be that if you were a publicly listed company, you would, have a PR firm, and their primary task was to get you in the Saturday tip sheet or, tip of the day by the newspapers, right? That was a really big thing back then. You would spend, big road shows, going to all the journalists and trying to convince them that you should be the hot tip, and that was a big effort. That's almost non-existent nowadays. You don't see that. That's completely disappeared. It's all moved digital now, right? So it's moved to this more real-time news. So the way I look at it is that investors are, somewhat impatient, which is only natural because, they're used to getting everything on their fingertips right away. They're also used to not paying for anything anymore. So the whole subscription model has been hit quite hard as well. So that's the biggest changes I've seen, is you've gone from that kind of waiting for the weekend tip sheet to get the impact in your stock on the following Monday, or being in a big spread in a industry magazine that would come out a month after your press release. That was the model up to around 2005. Really, since then, it's just moved more and more to company puts out news at 7 a.m. Investors are looking for direction and interesting content around that within 24 hours. If you haven't done it by then, you've lost them. That's how I look at it. So it's changed that way a lot.
Do you think that's called branding?
It is a bit of branding. Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's a combination of branding the company. I think no matter what company you are, what size, what sector, anywhere in the world, there is a little bit of branding involved nowadays. Obviously, depending on what you do, depends how important that brand can be to you. But yeah, it's a certain part of that. I think it's just a general, your communication strategies have got to be more internet focused rather than, newspaper focused, for example.
I think a lot today they call it awareness, or I think if you want to old school it, to me it sounds like branding, like just making sure that you remember that the name, and obviously, as you say, your product's got to be decent. If not, it just doesn't work. So in some sense, like I would tell people, preach to people, look, you just need to get yourself out there, and plus, the content and the message, but the frequency, like I was told once, like Domino's, who's such a giant, would put something out every week, and they found from their research that if they don't do 1 week, they actually lose percentage market share, just like that. And you're thinking, but you're the biggest pizza guy in the world, but yet you still have that effect,
I think repetition is really important. I think when you're a small company, I think that's part of our business model has always been that, and that's why we're really keen on that real-time news, and that, we're keen for our companies that we work with to make sure they're on camera or we're writing up about them on a regular basis. It doesn't necessarily need to be a really material announcement. It's sometimes just important to remind people you're still there. Yeah. Because investors do get impatient, and no news is bad news. Yeah. I'm a big believer in that. So if you're a company that doesn't have any news for a quarter, and it was perfectly normal, there's nothing wrong with that per se from the company's operational point of view, but from the investor perception point of view, that is a killer, because they'll assume something must be wrong because they haven't heard from you. Because companies that go quiet for very long times tends to be something bad's coming down the pipeline. Yeah. If you're quiet for legitimate reasons, that's fine, but you should still at least be out and talking about the company, even though you may not specifically be able to talk about anything you haven't announced yet. It's still important to get out there and remind people to say, hey, I'm still here, I'm still alive, everything's fine.
That's right, yeah. That's right. And that's what sort of that Samso thing is, that trying to get there. And when I was doing that, I was saying, well, you're a client of Proactive. Your videos are unlimited. Why go there 4 times a year, right?
Absolutely.
You pay for it.
Yeah.
Why not do this? And I think that what they can't get is that, I'm going to offend someone if I'm always out there, or I'm just going to be in their face. But what they don't realize is that people today love content. They can't get enough of content. If you don't give them content, they actually think, like as you've mentioned, something's not right. So I'm saying, you guys, you're a client Proactive. If I were you, you'd be maybe not every week, but a lot more than 4 times a year.
Absolutely. I mean, we say to all of our clients, really, minimum once a month you should be on camera, preferably twice a month. And I've heard that a lot too. There's always that balance between you want to go and tell the story and you want to be active, but you don't want to look overly promotional and look like you're just talking for the sake of talking all the time, because some investors don't like that. So there's always a balance between the two. You don't want to look over the top because then people think, well, this must be just a fluff story, right? But at the same time, if you're only coming in once a quarter, it's difficult to build a meaningful momentum in kind of building visibility for the company, because you literally just disappear for 3 months at a time, and that's a long time in stock markets, very long time.
I mean, that's why I like what you guys have, because when you compare yourself to your peers, the ones that hang around in Australia, you're the only one that's really international in some ways. and it creates a perception that you can actually be all-encompassing for looking for investors in some sense. So that's why I thought that you guys should be, these clients should be out there putting, even if it's just talking about not the company itself, but the product what they have as an educational, informative message.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's a big part of what we like to see from our clients as well, is that if you are a nickel company, well, you obviously have a lot of understanding of the nickel market as well. So that's one of those examples where you say, well, if you're a mid-tier nickel producer, and really your kind of news flow is really built around your quarterly or semi-annual statements, your production guidance, and your financials. Everything's geared that way, and that makes sense. But in between those, there's no reason why you can't have the CEO, for example, come in and talk about what's going on in the nickel market. Anything around that then ties back to them as a company, helps more strongly attach them to a nickel play, right? And that's important, I think. So that's the kind of thing we work with our clients a lot and advise them on, is come on and talk about things you are expert in, and we'll tie it back to the underlying company.
Correct, that's right. I mean, I'm sort of familiar with what you guys do in terms of the basics proactive products, but I also know that you guys do some in-depth research, I don't know, what your products?
Yes.
Maybe you can go a bit more into that.
I mean, we really have 4 products. So we have what we call the Digital Media Pack, which is the unlimited broadcast and editorial coverage. The second product is Brighter IR. Brighter IR is, people get confused when you say the word IR. They think, it's an investor relations roadshow type business. But no, Brighter IR is a corporate solutions business. So that is building your website, hosting your website, building your IR tools. That business is based out of London. We haven't aggressively launched it to Australia yet, but we will be bringing it here. And then we have the next product in the set is events. So we run events in Sydney and Melbourne every month. Lunch event, 120 people, maximum of 5 companies presenting. And we run those same events in London every Thursday. So that's our core event. And then the fourth product is sponsored research. That's paid for research, sponsored research, whatever you want to call it.
It's independent research.
It's definitely not independent. No, it's one of these things because with MiFID in the Europe and how things have changed, that we have that product already in the UK market, as we are licensed and registered with the FCA. So, and it's there, they call it a marketing document, right? That's what it is. Yeah. So it's research, but you can't call it research anymore. It's a marketing document, but it is written by an analyst. And we contract the analyst to write the report, and then our job really is to focus on the publication and syndication, because we're very good at that. That product we want to bring to Australia as well, but first we have to get our ASFL license. So should have that in the next few months, and then we would bring that here. And that's designed to kind of, if you've got the kind of media coverage, and that's light content, I would say, and it's designed to be short form and quick and snappy. This is designed to be that extra layer on top of that if you have a company that does want something more detailed and more in-depth, but still wants our distribution capabilities. It's an add-on product, yeah.
I mean, in terms of, not trying to make this into a big sell for proactive video, which I'm sure you'll be happy for that, but one of the things that prompted me to push on with what I do with Samso and things like that is the fact that when I look out there, everybody seems to be rehashing the announcement. I get that, because you can't have people writing organic stuff, because there's just too many things to write about. And so that was one of the things that was missing in the market, and that's where I sort of said, and I think that was fed back to me more than me realizing, and then once that happened, I realized that was the fact. But that's where I sort of mentioned, the reason why I brought it up is that you guys got unlimited videos. You guys should be doing this organic stuff yourself, because it doesn't, like you said, the nickel guy could be talking about nickel market. I did just a last video with Galena Mining, who's in lead, and in fact I was learning stuff as we went along on the video, because there's just no people understanding lead. And speaking to Alex about it, he also mentioned that when he was marketing, they just didn't get it. He had to sort of re-engineer the whole thing. And that's why one of the things I like with you guys is I think in distribution, I could be be wrong in this, but I doubt it. There is nobody as a media distributor, because a lot of the guys are, we got the forums, and then we got the ones who pump out little short form talks of things, but in terms of you want that distributed out, I think there is not much competition for you. Is that true? Do you think?
Yeah, to a degree. I think we have competitors in every market, but we don't have a competitor that's in every market that we're in. So I look at competitors in a very light terminology. I think there's a lot of room in the sandbox for lots of products, and different companies need different things at different parts of their life cycle. So I take a very kind of philosophical view on competitors. I don't sit around bashing them all day or anything like that. And I think there are reasons why.
Not publicly, anyway.
Well, yeah, exactly. Maybe down to the pub later at night. Excuse me. But yeah, I think when it comes to the distribution side, that's definitely one of our strengths, and it's because. And it's taken us a long time to get there. And the reason we don't have a lot of competitors there is because it's not easy. It takes a long time. We have a very high fixed cost base because we employ a lot of journalists, and journalists are, it's a cost on the business. That means you've got, the journalists produce a lot of content, but you've got to produce a lot of content for quite a long time at a certain standard, and it has to be very consistent. So there's a reason why we write the way we do. It's because there's a certain, almost like an Associated Press type of standard around how you write, and it's the structure of how you write, and all these things that you do that then get you into the room to have those conversations with much larger groups around content syndication, because they're very picky around those types of things. So if you're not producing at a high volume, at a certain standard and consistency, the conversation's over already. So yeah, and that took a long time to get. So yeah, I think that's why we don't have a lot of competitors on that piece. Certainly lots of groups that do kind of content-led focused products. Definitely, we have lots of competitors in every market in that, but none that do it at the kind of volume and size that we do.
Yeah, I like that point, because I think that this is the message a lot of people in this industry, I find, because this industry doesn't, they advertise, they used to do a lot of advertising, but they don't do a lot of marketing. They actually think marketing is advertising, as you said, putting the banners out, and I think that still happens now. Because they don't understand this whole engagement process. It's not putting one announcement out and having a big blurb about it and then do 10 videos about it. It's about doing those 10 videos over a lengthy time, or 20 videos over, and it's that consistency, the volume, and the time it takes, right?
Very much so. I think if you want a chart that goes like this instead of a chart that goes like this, you got to think about a more consistent kind of plan of attack, and how do I keep maintaining my visibility among investors who are probably watching my stock but haven't bought yet, rather than you don't hear anything for a very long time and then it's bam, big announcement, huge marketing spend, stock goes like this, and this is very common, and then day or two later it goes back down again, right? Because you get all the speculators coming to the stock. So if you want to avoid that type of chart, you got to think a little more about more of a medium-term plan, not what am I going to do in the next 6 weeks and how much am I going to spend when that really big announcement comes out. So I understand why companies do that. There's a lot of reasons why. This is the way the capital markets work, and capital raises and when they do it, and a lot of things are geared towards when do I need next year to raise money, and it tends to be a flurry of news right before that, try to get the share price up. But there's it's almost self-defeating in a lot of ways, because the more you do that, the harder it gets every time. And you'll see with a lot of these companies, that's the problem they get. They get the spikes, but then they go lower and then lower. And every time they're raising money at a lower and lower price, because every time they have to more aggressively push that one piece of news. And if it wasn't quite as good as they expected, that can have a really big impact on their ability to raise capital, perhaps where they wanted to.
Yeah, I had a conversation this morning with someone, and just saying, when you put out certain results, I'm thinking resources, because that's where my low-hanging fruits are. That people don't explain why that was good. They'll just, here it is, look how big and beautiful the numbers are, but they don't go along and say, well, this fits into this and this, and then they will use jargon words, and nobody else understands except people like myself and yourself who's been in this. And then the retailer goes, and when they see the big numbers, they go, oh, that must be good. And that's where you get the big sharp run. And then suddenly you don't get them hanging around, which we can lead to. I mean, one of the things I'm keen, because obviously you guys cover a lot of sectors, you biotech and health, and is there from your experience, obviously you see a lot of this, what's hot now, or what's the buoyant sector?
Yeah, at the moment right now, gold and silver, definitely very, very hot. Nickel's pretty hot. Up until about 3 months ago, I would have said cannabis is very, very hot, but it's definitely come off the boil. I think when, and different markets have different kind of speeds they're working at, and you've seen, the Canadian cannabis sector was very, very hot for the last few years and really came off the boil about 4 months ago, and probably
really
going to stay
off the boil or just gently off the boil?
No, aggressively off the boil.
Really?
Very big corrections in the stocks there. There was a couple of catalysts. It was basically earnings season for this is the first big earnings season. Most of them didn't hit the numbers that the market expected, but expectations were inflated.
Yeah.
I think people got ahead of themselves on how quickly cannabis would become almost like a household product, and also I think they overestimated how quickly even though it was legislated federally in Canada, it's still at the provincial level. They still have to, basically the federal government says it's legal now, but then they pass that kind of responsibility to each province to decide on, how are you going to manage licensing stores, distribution, online versus not online, all these things. And that when it got to that level field, it didn't happen anywhere near as quickly as people expected, especially in Ontario, which is the biggest market. They came out much slower than people were anticipating. So the whole market got hit. And then, most kind of high-profile CEO in the industry from Canopy Growth, he was, left the board of his company, and that everyone took it. That was a bit of a shock to the system. So since then, it's come off the boil quite a bit. You haven't seen as many IPOs. They're still doing financings, but I don't think the financings are getting done as quickly as they were. And you see more that it's convertible debt instead of equity. So all that kind of came off. So if you asked me 4 months ago, I would have said cannabis is still, looks very, very hot. And it's certainly going to be around. It's not going away, but it's definitely come off the boil. But then it's almost like, we see this a lot. You'll see the hot money move from different sectors. It was almost at the same time the gold price suddenly took off, and wham, out of the blue, almost every gold company we knew and silver companies, their share prices were back up to 52-week highs, and they're all coming back into the market and raising money. So you always have that speculative money wanting to go somewhere. And as soon as that cooled off and really piled into gold and silver, there's some other metals as well that seem to like rare earths had a bit of a comeback there. Nickel definitely, and there's a few others, but I think most of the money moves into gold and silver because it's the most well-known and recognized metals. People really understand it. Outside of that, I think when you look at the U.S. markets, people say biotech, but there's 15 subsets of biotech, and you can get really, really hot in a very specific type of drug delivery system, or a new potential way to deal with a certain type of cancer, and you can get really niche sets. And at the moment, I wouldn't say any of them is really, really hot, but U.S. biotech is like Australia mining, right? It's like that is where most of the money goes into, most of the speculative money goes into the mining industry, heavily supported and very well understood, right? Biotech is that in the U.S. That's where the vast majority of, you see the micro caps where they're raising money, and your retail investor in the U.S. has a very good understanding of biotechs. It's quite amazing actually when you go there and you see it, and you go and sit in presentation rooms with a $200-300 million NASDAQ listed biotech company, talking about very, very detailed, anti-nomenclature and all these kind of things, and you get people in the room who start asking very, very specific questions, who really understand it. So they just have all the money tends to go into biotech. So in the U.S., I always say it's generally biotech is where all the money goes, but it can be split down to many, many different subsets of what's hot and what's not. And I wouldn't say any of them are super hot at the moment.
How about IT? Wouldn't IT? Are you seeing IT?
Well, when you look at the large caps, there's definitely this focus on the unicorns, as they call them, and there was a range of those, and it tends to be disruptive tech that are the ones that come to the market, and these big splash IPOs like Lyft and Uber. But all those are below their IPO price now and have had big corrections. So the next wave of IPOs that were supposed to happen, which WeWork was one of them, has been pulled because the market's now taking a bit of a step back. And when you see that, it does trickle down to the smaller end of the market. So smaller disruptive tech deals will also slow down. I don't see anything that's particularly hot in the small caps of the U.S. and across tech, disruptive tech, medical tech, anything like that at the moment.
I always joke to people about the best way to measure a market is to talk to the service guys. service
Yeah.
guys are getting lots of business, then you go, oh, that's
Yes.
getting hot. Like I spoke to Gio a couple of days ago, and I said, are you busy? And he says, no, not really. We haven't been busy for a few months.
Okay.
But I'm here on the capital side. You're hearing over subscription, money flowing everywhere into the gold sector, the mineral sector. So from Proactive, obviously people pay you. So are you seeing suddenly a sector going, we want to join up, and on another sector, look, can't pay you this month, I'll pay you next month. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I think the mining sector is the one that we're seeing the most business from right now, and that's really picked up in the last 3 months. So definitely seeing more. The mining industry's been through a very difficult time since 2013. It came back a bit in 16, and then it kind of cooled off again, and now it seems to be coming back. And when it comes back quick, because you have especially when you look at the Canadian markets, the British markets, and Australia, heavily resource focused. So when the money does flow back in, it tends to flow in big, and it tends to get fairly widely dispersed across assets that are, have merit in them already. I wouldn't say the grassroots exploration ones, you see them suddenly raising tons of money. They tend to be the last on the list to get the money. It starts with the kind of mid-tier producers, and then it will go into the advanced exploration assets, and then it will start coming into very promising exploration assets, and then it goes into the grassroots guys. They're kind of last. So at the moment, what we see is definitely the advanced exploration companies are a lot of demand. We've picked up a lot of new clients in that. Yeah, we've never been busier, actually. This has been our busiest quarter ever.
Nice,
yeah.
That's good. Okay, we could talk forever.
Yes.
But I want to thank you for giving us some time, and I think it was good. I work with you guys. You guys put my stuff out because it's so fantastic. And maybe when Samso takes over Proactive, we'll have to streamline and sack everyone in your Perth office.
Sounds good.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, it was great to chat. Thank you.
All right.